The Pittsburgh Pirates are now on a 10-game losing streak, and accountability has to be the word that comes to mind.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where I bring you all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates, from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like all of you here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode, by the way, is brought to you by Game Time. If you want to go to PNC Park, that's the wrong thing right there. If you want to go to PNC Park this year, you still have time. If you want to go to Steelers games, you still have time. And guess what? Use the Game Time app. It'll get you in there really fast, especially if you're thinking about it last minute. But yesterday, the Pittsburgh Pirates lost 8-2 to the San Diego Padres, extending their season-long losing streak of 10 games now. And Mitch Keller did not have a great day. The offense, once again, did not have a great day. Nobody in the Pirates organization really had a great day yesterday. And at this point, the Pirates are now 8 games under 500. So not even 2 weeks ago, folks, we were talking about this being a team that, could be a team that could make the playoffs potentially. They were right there. They get Brian De La Cruz. They get Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. They get Jalen Beeks. They moderately buy at the deadline. They could have gotten there. They had the feelings of it. They had the pitching staff. Things were working. They made upgrades to the offense. It felt like things were finally, coming around. Then this happens, where you're now on a 10-game losing streak. And again, a lot of these losses have been overly frustrating, mainly due to the fact that a lot of them have been by one run. They've led in a lot of these games as well, late in these games. And you've now virtually taken yourself out of playoff contention in a matter of a week. Truthfully, you look around the National League right now, Colorado is 3-7 in their last 10. The Marlins are 4-6 in their last 10. The Nationals are 5-5 in their last 10. And the Pirates are 0-10 in their last 10 games. Longest losing streak in baseball by a large number. The closest team to them in the National League as far as losses in a row are concerned are St. Louis and San Francisco at 4. This team has imploded. And I see some people joking about other teams right now, like the Philadelphia Phillies. They come out of the All-Star break and they've been really slow, really sluggish. The gap between them and the Braves and the Mets is kind of closed a little bit. But the Phillies had room to do this. The Phillies had room to have a bad month. They had room to have a lengthy losing streak. Pirates didn't have that luxury. If we remember, right before the All-Star break, this team had to go on a win streak just to be 500 going into said All-Star break with a sweep of the Chicago White Sox. They had to do that. And at this point, you've now lost 10 in a row, which means you were 2 games over 500 going into this stretch. And I get hearing things, especially from the team, about we're playing the right times, like we're playing good baseball at times, but we're playing bad baseball at the worst time, at the wrong time, which is precise. I mean, you can make an argument, and I said this on my show on Tuesday, you can make an argument that this team has outplayed the teams they've played over the last couple of weeks, outside of maybe the Dodgers. And you could look back at, I'd say, at least 5 of these games that they've lost across this 10-game losing streak and say they should have won those games, but they didn't. And the word that I want to bring up today is accountability. And I think it's a word that is overused a little bit in the sports scope. this person should be held accountable for this, or this person should be held accountable for this. And we all know that sports is a lot different than life. I mean, if I didn't go to work for 10 days, or if I didn't do this podcast for 10 days, you wouldn't see me on this show anymore. Right? I would be held accountable for it, for not doing my job, for not performing as well as I could perform. Right? That would be something I would be held accountable for. Or if I didn't show up to my bartending job and I just decided, you know what, the next 10 drinks, I just don't want to make them. I would be held accountable for that. I would probably be fired. But at the end of the day, this is sports. Guys can still get employed even if they're playing bad. Remind yourself for something here right now that this is a team that currently employs Ben Heller, Yasmani Grandal, and Ji-Hwan Bae. Ben Heller, I think, I'll leave him out of this for the most part because you need relief arms all the time. There's absolutely no reason why Yasmani Grandal should be on this team anymore. If you heard me on Tuesday as well, I said Henry Davis needs to be back up here. You're not going to know if he can't hit. You're not going to know if he can hit at the MLB level if he sticks in AAA. You're just not going to learn anything about it. I think the same goes for Jack Sawinski at this point. I'd rather watch Sawinski than Ji-Hwan Bae. I'd rather watch Billy Cook than Ji-Hwan Bae. I'd rather watch Matt Gorski than Ji-Hwan Bae. There's a lot of players that I would rather watch play the outfield than Ji-Hwan Bae at this point. I just don't think he offers any value to this team anymore. Can he offer value somewhere else? Sure he can. But find me a spot for him in 2025. So why are we wasting time on it? And going back to the overarching thought here about the accountability, what I find interesting about all of this is the way the Pirates have handled themselves through this stretch. They don't exactly look all that I don't want to say upset, but the players know their ability. They know that they can get out of this and potentially win 5 in a row or anything like that because that's baseball. But when you have a stretch like this, 10 games in a row, when you were theoretically in the conversation to be a wild card team come October, not even 2 weeks ago, and now you have effectively run yourself out of that conversation in the matter of a week and a half, somebody needs to be held accountable. And I'll go ahead and tell you right now, it's not going to be the players. The players are going to be here. Ke'Bryan Hayes signed that extension 2 years ago. He's going to be here no matter what. Brian Reynolds is the best player on this team in the field and at the plate. He's going to be here no matter what. Paul Skeens is going to be here no matter what. Every player you see on the field outside of Grandal, Taylor, maybe Tellez, and some of these relief arms that they're using right now are all going to be here. The Pirates need to make a statement right now about this kind of thing being unacceptable. And if you want my honest opinion, and I've been a defender of it for a while, that Derek Shelton is not a terrible manager. He deserves time, considering the last 3 or 4 years, they have not had talent on this roster whatsoever. But at some point, you got to make a point. Be it the general manager, be it the manager, be it the pitching coach, be it the hitting coach. Because I asked this question to myself the other day, and I asked this question about a lot of things. Name me one hitter that Andy Haynes has made better in his tenure with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Name me more than one pitcher that Oscar Marin has made better in his tenure with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And let's also not forget, folks, that Derek Shelton is a former hitting coach. And his team has made half of their outs the last 2 days via the strikeout. Literally half of their outs the last 2 games against the Padres were via strikeout. That is unacceptable. And all of this is unacceptable. And the Pirates need to do something about it. I can also tell you on the same coin, and both of these things can be true, they won't do anything until the offseason, if they're going to do it at all. And if they do, great. Find something better. If they don't, we'll be having an interesting conversation come the offseason, because something needs to change. This is year 5 of this. Something needs to change. And it's not going to be the players, at least for now. So where does that leave you? Leaves the coaching staff. Do something about it, because this is unacceptable. Period. Anyways, next on the show, we're going to talk about Jared Jones and his rehab start that he had with the Indianapolis Indians yesterday. And we're also going to talk about his expectations upon when he returns, as well as the on-pace stat that you do not want to hear. Those will be coming up next here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, because with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. You can get all-in pricing on the Game Time app. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, by the way, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you can see the exact view that you're going to have. And the lowest price guarantee allows you to get some money back, especially if you find tickets somewhere else for less, because Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is indeed your team every day. After making this your first listen, make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day with Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call him Sully. He has you covered as October nears, covering everything in the world of Major League Baseball. Also listen to Locked On Steelers, Locked On Penguins, Locked On Penn State, Locked On Pitt. Listen to all those shows. We all do a phenomenal job here at the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you all of your news that you want on sports every single day. As far as actual baseball is concerned, Jared Jones had a rehab start with the Indianapolis Indians in AAA yesterday, and he's been on his way back from that lat strain that he suffered about a month and a half ago. Now at this point, I want to say a month ago, but I don't remember how long it was. But he did okay in that start. He allowed 5 runs, 4 earned on 7 hits and a walk in 3 1/3 innings. Struck out 3 along the way. So not a lot to really discuss there. He did throw 67 pitches. So I think that's a little bit more of what you're going to be looking for, is the volume of pitches that Jared Jones was throwing, more or less than the stats that you were seeing him throw in Indianapolis. But Jared Jones, again, I mean, you look at this guy, had a phenomenal start to the year, kind of even made us kind of forget about Paul Skeens there for a little bit at the beginning of the season. And then, of course, Paul Skeens arrives in May and takes over center stage. But Jared Jones has had a solid year this year. I mean, he's been a guy that the Pirates know is going to be a future part of this rotation. He's a guy that you've also seen kind of slow down a little bit right before that injury. His ERA on the season still sits at a 3.56, 98 strikeouts, and a 1.11 whip. But in his last 7 starts that he had, 4.5 ERA in those 7 starts, and 20 walks, 19 earned runs, and 35 strikeouts. So he was getting hit up a little bit. I mean, you look at the starts that he had before the injury. Obviously, he had the blow-up start in Colorado where he allowed 6 earned runs and only 4 2/3. And then he followed that with 2 solid starts. I mean, he only gave up 2 earned runs against Tampa Bay and 1 earned run against St. Louis in 12 innings pitched. So he was doing fine right before he got injured. And then obviously his injury kind of opened things up in this pitching staff. And then, of course, you see Marco Gonzalez out for the rest of the year. And then Martin Perez, who the Pirates saw yesterday against San Diego, of course, traded at the deadline. So now the rotation has pretty much been Skeens, Ortiz, Keller, Falter, and Jones has been absent. So you kind of want him to come back to solidify this rotation again, which also has not been all that great as of late. I mean, it's been a rotation that hasn't been terrible, but it has not been the rotation that we saw in the first couple months of the season, the last couple of weeks, which has also contributed to this losing streak. Now, as far as Jared Jones is concerned, I think you do want to make sure that you ensure as a team that he stays healthy through the remainder of the year. Be it if he only pitches 5 innings in these starts when he comes back, be it however you want to limit him in innings, be all of those things. He's 23 years old. He's a guy we know is going to be here for a while, right? And when you look at Jared Jones and Paul Skeens in particular as well, when you see that the postseason chances have faded away, you start to have that conversation that a lot of people were bringing up earlier in the year about shutting these guys down at some point. You may see that. And I wouldn't be shocked if you see that come the middle of September when they reach maybe 120, 130 innings, because we remember at the beginning of the year, they kind of talked about having a predetermined amount of innings that they wanted these guys to pitch. That's why you saw Paul Skeens and Jared Jones throughout the year kind of get pulled out of games a little bit early because they were kind of thinking, hey, we want to make sure these guys stay healthy through the remainder of the year. We don't want them to have an aggressive amount of fatigue. We don't want these guys to be in a spot where they feel like they're being pressured to get a bunch of innings out of the way. And Jared Jones is going to be like that. And especially with the lat strain, you don't mess with those. This is the same injury that David Bednar was dealing with in spring training and the same injury that I think has kind of hindered his entire season. So you have to wonder how that affects Jared Jones when he comes back as well. Is that going to be an injury that's going to allow him to pitch 100%? Now, obviously, the Pirates are not going to allow him to even tote the rubber if he is not 100% or at least feels 100%. It's kind of hard to feel like anybody at this point in the season is 100%, but the expectations for him, I think, would just be to kind of get back, or not all the way back, but close to what he was doing at the beginning of the year, using the high volume strikeout numbers to get him through these outings and keeping guys off base. He was doing that earlier this year, and then you kind of saw it teeter down a little bit. His ERA was was going up because of the outings that he was having. And Jared Jones, again, he's a phenomenal pitcher. We should be very happy that he's coming back for a lot of reasons. As I mentioned already earlier, he's going to solidify this. He's going to solidify this rotation. You're going to have Keller, Skeens, Ortiz, Falter, Jones. That's going to be 5-man. That's what you're going to work with. Jake Woodford, he's done very good. I'd love to see Jake Woodford stay on the roster somehow as a long relief option, but he's not going to have to start anymore, which I think in turn is good for him, even though Jake Woodford has done well in his few starts that he's had. But you would much rather see Jared Jones continue to progress. You'd rather see Jared Jones go in there and continue to kind of build on the rookie season that he's had. Because let's also not forget, this is a guy that a lot of people were joking about getting Rookie of the Year votes at one point in the season. And now, obviously, he's not going. He still might, but I highly doubt it with the way that you see Jackson Merrill and Paul Skeens and a lot of these other guys playing. And again, 67 pitches yesterday. And, you know, he could be back soon. He could be back early next week. That's the expectation that you could see for Jared Jones, is to see him back at some point next week. He's, again, not great yesterday in his rehab start, but I wouldn't worry about that all that much. A lot of those times, those rehab starts or those rehab games for these veterans are not all that great. It's more of just getting loose, showing that you're healthy so that you can get back to where you want to be. But I would expect Jared Jones back at some point. Maybe he returns against Texas, or maybe they just opt and wait and bring him back when they have the 7-game homestand against Cincinnati and Chicago. But either way, Jared Jones is making his return very soon. He had that rehab start, and expecting him to return. Let's just hope he can come back and bring some of that early season magic that he had and end his rookie season on a high note. To end this show, I don't know why I couldn't get that out. To end today's show, I'm going to talk about the on-pace statistic that you do not want to hear to end today's episode of Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 because Prize Picks, folks, it's super easy. It's available in over 30 states across the United States. Of course, California, Texas, and Georgia are in there. And Prize Picks allows you to just play against the numbers. You're not playing against the spread. You're not playing against anything else. You're not playing really anything else but that number. So if you think Brian Reynolds can have more than 1.5 doubles in a game, go bet it on Prize Picks. You think O'Neal Cruz is going to hit a cannonball for over half a home run, then go do that on Prize Picks as well, because Prize Picks is super easy to use. Their interface is so simple to use as well. And all you have to do is go to the App Store or Google Play, download the app today, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. So you're getting free money on Prize Picks. So don't forget, pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. Today's episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB, because when you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. Blast off with the iconic summer flavor of Popsicle Firecracker, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. Find all your favorite flavors on the website, from acai berry and lemon lime to pina colada. Tear, pour, and live more, because one stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. You get 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, and it's always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. So no more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. And thank you, everybody, to tuning in to this show, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. And sadly, right now, folks, your Pittsburgh Pirates are on pace to be... what happened in 2023? What happened in 2023, folks? Well, let's hit a couple of points first before we bring that up. The Pittsburgh Pirates right now have not had a winning season since 2018, 2019, 2018. Can't remember. It's been a while. But under the Ben Cherington regime, they have not had a winning record as of yet. And their current manager, Derek Shelton, has been pretty bad. Obviously, the teams have also been pretty bad also. But Derek Shelton, right now, has a .412 winning percentage. Very fitting for the city of Pittsburgh, if you ask me. And there's only 3 managers in Major League Baseball history that have a worse winning percentage in as many games as Derek Shelton. 2 of those were before 1945, and the other one was the 1969 expansion San Diego Padres. Just let that sink in for a minute. But the on-pace stat that you might not want to hear, and you don't probably want to hear, is that the Pittsburgh Pirates are on pace as of today, even after this, through this losing streak that they've had. They are on pace to go 76-86. That should sound very familiar to you, because that was their record in 2023. After they had a very strong second half, after some of these younger players looked like they were kind of accelerating a little bit, You know, you had Henry Davis up here. You had Endy up here. Oviedo was looking good before he was shut down. And you look at all these things, and when you think about on pace, obviously, lots can happen in that on pace as far as getting to that 76 and 86 mark. But there's no way you can spin it to say that that's a good thing for this team. This was a year where you look at it, and for the large part of the season, it was this feeling that they were easily going to eclipse 76 wins. I predicted them to get to 83. Let's see if they could still do that. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be a hard one. But at the end of the day, if they find a way to go 76 and 86, goes back to the accountability I talked about earlier. Folks, I'm going to let you know that's not a good thing that's not a good thing at all for the coaching staff if they get to that mark. And I said it on my Tuesday show that it's a disappointment if they finish 81 and 81. It's a disappointment if they finish below 500 at all. And it's because I think it would say a lot to the fan base. It would say a lot to the players. And truthfully, I think it would say a lot to the organization itself if this Pirates team can just find a way to get over 500. Because that would propel this rebuild. That would propel everything you're talking about to say, hey, we've done it now. We've been a winning baseball club. We know how to do it. That's exactly what they did in 2012. It's exactly what they did in 2018. Now, obviously, 2018 didn't pan out the way 2012 did. But at the end of the day, I think a winning record would be massive for this team. But when you're on pace for the exact same record that you had last season, in a year where you have added Paul Skeens, in its own right, Joey Bart, Jared Jones, Aroldis Chapman, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Brian De La Cruz, in a year where you've made all these additions and you've, in your own right, gotten better, and you're on pace to have the same record that you had last year, it's not good at all, folks. And again, as I always tell you guys, I don't want to get on this show and berate this team constantly. But they deserve it right now. They need to be held accountable for this. And they need to be criticized for this. Because at the end of the day, it's been too long. And they have a chance to turn it around. They've done it. They've been multiple games under. Now, this is the lowest they've been, but they've been multiple games under 500 this year and clawed their way back. They've proven they can do it. The schedule loosens up a little bit. But let's see, as Greg Brown kept saying on the broadcast on Tuesday, who's going to step up? That's going to be the story. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates, from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. Find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free just for you. And until tomorrow, folks, see you on the flip side.